We had a beautiful family whose baby was taken off life support, and Dad started singing "You Are My Sunshine" to his wee girl, and I just let out this like a cry that just came out of nowhere, because it was so beautiful and so sad, and we kind of had a wee giggle about it, that my cry just exploded, and I said, I'm just going to put my camera down, and we just sat there, you know. So you wouldn't be human if you didn't feel touched by what you see. There are some very difficult moments, but there's also some really profoundly beautiful moments, and they're the ones I always remember, the things that we have helped facilitate. You know, there might be a time when the midwife says that Dad hasn't held baby at all, and by the time I leave, Dad's holding baby and exploring baby's hair and holding toes, and I got tingles even when I say that. That just, to me, is amazing. There's always something great that comes out of those sessions. So some of the times I don't walk out sad and feeling burdened. I actually feel really good, because there has been something really beautiful and tangible that's come out at a tough time. And I think people really find that hard to understand, but death is a part of life, and I think it's really important that we acknowledge that and not be fearful of it. You know, we've had times where families have been in absolute hysterics in the room. Just because their baby has died doesn't mean that they don't have their sense of humour, their personality. They're just going through a really crappy time, and all the human emotions are still there. Yes, you are absolutely stricken by grief, but there are really touching, amazing, beautiful, beautiful times.
But even the special moments require some unwinding afterwards.
So once I've got home from a session, I usually just do my normal household duties, and I really try and edit the photos as soon as I can, because they're precious. So I come in and go to my china cabinet and choose my favourite glass. I usually just pour a wee port if I have one, and get my soy candles. I kind of like I love the celebration, I guess, of a candle, and also the remembrance value of it too. And this is my little ritual, my little treat for myself as well. So. Sometimes I sit quietly and just go through the photos and search for those beautiful moments, and by that stage I've usually spoke to the parents about what is their favourite feature, and the quirky little folded under toe that Dad has as well, or the funny little folded ear. So I make sure that I'm providing them with all those little things that I know that they loved.
Everything Sharon does for Heartfelt is voluntary, as is the palliative care work she's done in a Vietnamese orphanage for the last 5 years. She gets by financially on other photography work and a line of women's clothing she's designed.
It sounds complicated, but it's quite a simple life. I want a life where I'm making a difference and I'm doing what I love, and for me that's the biggest reward. And that fills my bucket. That's what makes me get out of bed every day. You know, we're not here for long, and I think it's about really going, well, screw society and what they say that we should be doing, that we should work this 9-to-5 job. Follow your heart. If there's something that you really, really want to do, make it happen. You know, I wrote a list 5 years ago about where I would really love to be in my life, and it was a bit of a pipe dream, and I'm here and I'm doing it. So I just think there's always room for kindness. Every day there's an opportunity to be kind to somebody.
So this is a photo album that we have. It's a beautiful wee photo album that we
Sharon's willingness to do this work has meant that Nicola and Noel have a tangible reminder of their son, and the intimate and tender pictures have been a source of comfort.
this going home outfit, and some amazing close-ups of Tanner just holding one of Noel's fingers.
The beautiful little fingers,
yeah.
It's a nice one of the two of you together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite emotional to look at them. Yeah, it really, they have this amazing power to take you right back to the day. And so, you know, like, you do look at them and you remember that day, but it's also, you know, like it's your only day with them. So, yeah, if you want to remember him, then it's always going to be bittersweet.
I guess, you know, I wanted to enjoy holding my son, but that was really going to be the only opportunity for me to do that. So, whilst I really enjoyed it, yeah, the real sadness is that, you know, that's the only opportunity. So I guess for me, that photo is one example of, yeah, the best and worst.
This is the necklace that I'd had made. I'd finished my family. It has my 5 children's names on it.
Not everyone has photos to remember a lost child, but Carlina Callagher has a piece of jewellery that means a lot to her.
So there's Jack, May, Quinn, Isla and Maisie. And that's them all, yeah, on my family tree.
And it includes her second child, May, who she lost in a devastating stillbirth over 13 years ago.
That initial time of shock is a little bit like an out-of-body experience, I think, and sort of, you know, looking down on your cells and everything goes slow and quiet and trying to sort of get your head around what that now means, and you do a lot of bargaining and things like that to try and make it not so, and think that things can change, and you hold on to that minute possibility that they're wrong and the baby will be born alive, and coming to terms with that, you know, bad things happen to good people sometimes, and yeah, it's really horrible.
Did you have an opportunity to spend some time with her?
I was really concerned with what she might look like when she was born, prior to having her, and I remember asking if I could see a photo of a baby born at 32 weeks, just so that I was mentally prepared for what was going to come out of me. I found that really helpful, and the physical pain was lovely because it was real and I could feel it, and I liked it hurting because I didn't know what to do with all the hurting that was happening inside of me. So when it was time for her to be born, I felt, I suppose, powerful in a way, because I knew that I was parenting her and this was part of me doing something for her.
While Carlina recovered after the birth, her husband Chris spent some precious one-on-one time with May before returning her to Carlina's room.
My mum was also there, and she was holding May, and they'd wrapped May completely in a blanket and I couldn't see her face. And when Mum stood up to come over with her, and I said to Mum to stop because I wasn't ready to see her yet, which has taken me an awful lot of years to not feel horribly guilty about that, because, you know, mothers are supposed to be excited about seeing their babies and wanting to see them, and I'm afraid. So I feel, yeah, very terrible for that. But I just sort of needed to prepare myself really for what I thought she was going to look like. Sorry.
And then the moment came where you felt you could?
Yeah, so they gave me some time, and I went and was showered and things, and when I got back to the room, they had placed her in her wee mother's basket on the wee blanket right over her for me, and they picked some flowers from outside and laid them around her on the bed and stuff as well. Yeah, and I wanted to be excited to see her, and I was excited to see her, but I didn't want to be frightened about what she looked like. So I started from her feet and worked my way up. So by the time I got to her head, I was really looking forward to seeing her and being able to hold her and have a cuddle. And I thought she was just precious when I saw her. And yeah, I was really excited to finally meet her properly and be able to touch her and talk to her and stuff. So yeah.
Carlina found that to cope with her loss, it helped to be around others who understood. She joined SANS, an organisation that offers support to anyone who's lost an infant. Years later, she works for them herself as a volunteer, helping others deal with the same grief.
The thing is, once you leave the hospital, and myself feeling very safe in hospital and very nurtured and protected, and yet, and when you walk out the doors to leave, that you're very much alone. So SANS really is one of the very few organisations on the other side of those doors that's there for families to get support from. And I used to hang out every month for the meeting to come and save up everything that had been hard over the month that I felt I couldn't share with others, and then be able to come to the meeting and just let it all out and feel sort of relieved, and with people that I knew understood, and the reassurance that I was being normal in my grief, and that also being able to see other women who were further along in their journey, and to think, you know, that could be me one day, hopefully, and that I would be able to be a normal person again, whatever that was, and laugh at things. Yeah.
And now, some years down the track, she has become a person others can confide in.
Mums sometimes at school have come up to me to tell me that they're feeling sad because they've just had a miscarriage or things like that, and I just think that is so amazing that they want to share that with me. And that, yeah, probably in those early days I did talk a lot about it, because obviously it was the biggest thing in my life for a long time, but my world has started to grow around it, and I don't need to have to tell about her anymore. However, I do always do a kiss on the bottom of all my letters for her, and one for my other children as well. So not that other people need to know that, but I know.
And your children?
Very much. So they always knew about us having another baby, and they had a sister, and that she wasn't here, and my daughters, when they were little, used to like getting her wee container out and look at May's dirt, which was her ashes, and have a wee look and things, and I loved that she was just in our family, and that, you know, she was just a part of who we were.
Spectrum with Katie Gossip this week in regards to the loss of a child and how it affects hundreds of families around New Zealand each year. RNZ International, time for a frequency change. AM listeners, please retune to 15720 kHz in the 19 metre band. That frequency again, retune to 50 kHz in the 19 metre band. And we'll do our change as we do to the sound of the bellbird, the Korimako. Don't forget, we are on the internet. RNZI.com is where you can find us on the internet, RNZI.com, or if you've got Facebook, RNZI, and search for Pacific News. You're with RNZ International. With RNZ International. We've just done a frequency change for our AM listeners. They're now with us on 15720 kHz in the 19 metre band. And we're on the internet, rnzi.com, and also on Facebook, RNZI. Just search for Pacific News. Coming up for you at 9 o'clock, I'll have our Pacific Regional News for you. And following that, we'll rejoin RNZ National from her Saturday morning program. She'll be talking with Substantia Jones, who's an activist against the immigration of fat people and runs the keynote address speaker at Fat Studies Identity, Agency and Embodiment Conference, which is being held in Palmerston North at the end of the month. And also the opening of her solo exhibition of her photographic work at Te Manawa Museum. Substantia Jones with Kim Hill after the news, which is coming up very shortly here on RNZ International. RNZ International Pacific Regional News at Mario, I'm Colette Jansen. The Solomon Islands government says it's repatriating students studying in Papua New Guinea due to ongoing concerns about their safety. Students in PNG have been boycotting classes for weeks in protest of Prime Minister Peter O'Neill's refusal to stand down to face corruption charges. These protests have turned violent in the past 2 weeks, with clashes at campuses in Goroka, Lae, and an incident where police opened fire on students from the University of PNG in Port Moresby. The Solomon Islands government says it's been monitoring the situation closely and will today start repatriating 127 students from the University of PNG, the University of Goroka, and Unitec in Lae. It says it's concerned about the students' safety, the lack of education they're receiving, and uncertainty about the future of the semester. A French Polynesian member of the French Assembly has been given a 2-year suspended prison sentence and declared ineligible for office for 5 years. Jean-Paul Tuiave was found guilty of embezzling about $200,000 US in subsidies from his parliamentary attribution to an association in Tahiti, which then dispersed the money back to him. The money was used to finance a trip to the United States, buy jewellery and pay 2 men who worked in restaurants owned by Tuiava. Tuiava has 10 days to lodge an appeal for the loss of his civil rights before the judgment is forwarded to the French Constitutional Council and Assembly President, who will strip Tuiava of his mandate. Tuiava has already said he will quit politics at the end of his term. There would not be a by-election in French Polynesia as general elections are scheduled for within the next year. The Norfolk Island People of Democracy Group is calling on Australia to delay the island's merger into New South Wales, set for July the 1st. The group has led opposition on Norfolk since Australia abolished the island's autonomy about a year ago. Canberra claimed the island could no longer fend for itself and passed laws incorporating it into New South Wales, which is due to happen in just 2 weeks. But there's been vigorous opposition, including an appeal to the United Nations for Norfolk's listing as a non-self-governing territory. The island's former Culture Minister, Robin Adams, says they've written to the Australian government to point out Canberra is breaching its international obligations.
I'm asking it to step up to the plate and take this situation on board, and in the meantime to take steps to put a pause on what is happening until the Special Committee on Decolonisation has had an opportunity to look at Norfolk Island's case.
Robin Adams. A new report on the state of nutrition around the world puts Pacific Island countries at the top of malnutrition statistics. According to the report, backed by the World Health Organization, the rise is due to the increase in obesity rates rather than people being undernourished. Indira Stewart has more.
The statistics show most of the Pacific region will fail to reach global nutrition targets set for 2025. The report states most Pacific countries showed no progress in implementing healthy diet policies, despite having the highest number of obese and diabetic people. Papua New Guinea had one of the highest rates of stunted growth due to malnutrition and the highest prevalence of anemia in women of reproductive age. Pacific countries made up 8 of the top 10 countries with the highest prevalence of adult obesity, with Palau topping the list at 80% of its population. Tonga showed the highest prevalence of adult diabetes. The report showed that low to middle income governments spent around 2% of their budget on nutrition. It suggests that figure isn't enough, given that almost half of deaths in those countries were due to non-communicable diseases. This is Indira Stewart.
Relief efforts in Tonga are continuing as floodwaters recede from low-lying areas in Nuku'alofa. More than 350 people in the capital have been affected, with some families moved to evacuation centres. This is after heavy downpours last week saw 300 millimetres of rain fall in 24 hours over Friday and Saturday, with rains continuing up until Tuesday. The Director of the National Emergency Management Office, Mahimo Eho, says relief funding allocations sought earlier in the week have now been released and authorities are stepping up relief efforts.
We've been supporting them by way of trying to evacuate to them to some drier place or safe higher grounds, and distribution of safe water, mainly because it's a health concern that when people in this area don't access clean water, then we might have some other threats other than the actually being inundated.
Lavini Aho. And that's your Pacific Regional News on RNZ International. You can check us out on Facebook at search for Pacific News with RNZI, or you can check us out on the web, rnzi.com.
RNZ International, the voice of the Pacific.
People who are fat are subject to a double whammy of disapproval these days. There are aesthetic judgments, which anybody who's been to an art gallery with old paintings lately knows. Loads of lovely fat women there. And there's the health judgment. If you are fat, you're greedy and lazy and headed for an early grave. Thus we have a weight loss industry worth billions and billions of dollars, and we have Substantia Jones, who has founded the Body Positivity Project. It's a photography project which celebrates fat bodies. You can click on it on our webpage and have a look. She's based in New York. She's here for a Massey University conference called Fat Studies, Identity, Agency and Embodiment, later this month. And there is also an exhibition of her work coming up at Tim Manawa Museum in Palmerston North. Good morning, Substantia Jones, which I love you. Nom de plume, Substantia Jones.
Nom de plump.
Nom de plump in your case. What's this photography project designed to do?
It sort of has become something that is not what it was designed to do. In the beginning, I observed somewhat anecdotally that when people view a thing or a being as attractive, as having beauty, they give more weight to it, more gravity. They pay closer attention to it.
Is weight just a typical element?
It's unintentional. But for more than a decade, I volunteered and then trained volunteers for a nonprofit group which brought live music into hospitals to perform at the bedsides of patients. Literally my job for many years was observing the patients' responses, monitoring their responses. And I noted over these many years that they responded so much more positively to musicians who were traditionally beautiful in the Western sense, in a way that had nothing to do with the musicianship, the talent, the rapport between the two. And my first impulse was, oh, that sucks. Human beings are so horrible. But then I realized there's got to be some element of human nature that causes us to feel that way toward things that we view as beautiful. So I thought maybe that can be manipulated. I then observed that if you repeated positive depictions of that which repels you or that you find unpleasant, even neutral repeated depictions can change the way you feel about that thing. So
because aversion therapy was just the opposite.
Well, I found that in me and in my group, my contemporaries, I found that, it even worked in a relationship that I was in, I found that you can change the way you feel about something if you feel negatively by just looking, for example, applying it to fat people. Looking at positive photos of fat people who look like you can cause you to feel better about yourself. So I put those things together, then with the appearance of digital photography, started taking naked pictures of my own body. And that is how the Adipositivity Project started. Of course, in the beginning, what I thought was, I'm going to change minds. This is for the general public. This is to cause people to view us as humans in a way they haven't before. But what I didn't realize in the beginning was that fat people themselves needed to see that, needed to hear that. And that's really who the project has become.
All right, so you've got people who feel better about themselves because you've taken out shots of them, actually. I mean, they're beautiful, beautiful photographs.
Thank you, Kim.
But the people are enormous. I mean, they're enormous people, right?
There are all sizes of fat. Some are small fats, medium fats, large fats. There are the people who are not
small fats, actually.
There are some.
Okay. Maybe they're not up there, but they are a beautiful, beautiful fleshy shots. What is it about human nature that makes people averse to fat people?
I think there are a couple of things. The most noted, at least in the U.S. where I'm from, is money and greed, because we have a $66 billion a year weight loss industry, and what I call, in the bigger picture, what I call the angst industrial complex. They depend on us not only being dissatisfied with our own bodies, but they depend on us having hate for people with non-normative bodies, anyone who does not conform in a physical way to what they tell us we should look like. If you got your belief about what human bodies look like solely from television, movies, advertising, you would think that almost everyone was thin, either thin or fat in the butt of jokes, or to be ridiculed or felt sorry for. And that's not what humans are. There's a vast size variation spectrum of benign human size variation. Some of us live at the larger end. We occupy all points in that, but only the smaller end, people who occupy the smaller end are being given visibility. And visibility is vital for one's well-being. It's vital for everybody.
What do you think about the headlines talking about the obesity epidemic then?
I think a conversation about that might derail talking about body autonomy. I think some can argue that there is no such thing. They keep changing the scales to perhaps make the difference. But I would recommend anyone...
You know that's not true.
No.
I mean, I go to America, for example, and there is huge numbers of fat people in America. It begs the question of how, when fat people are in the majority in America, how it is that you can say that fat people are still invisible and marginalized.
Oh, because they are not in power. We are not given the visibility that we require, that everyone requires.
It's as if people are in denial about it then, because you've got large numbers of fat people, and you've got a huge, as you say, a diet industry, and there's some kind of counterintuitive thing going on there.
Actually, not, if you think about it. And my own body is a perfect example. I was a thin child. I was thin in my teen years. And once I became dissatisfied with my body...
Why did you become dissatisfied with your body?
When I started developing, I don't know if I wasn't emotionally ready for it or didn't have the knowledge that I needed, but I didn't like it. And I started obsessing over how can I sit so that my thighs don't look shapely, and I would, strive to have my bikini bottom sort of suspend from one hip bone to the other. And so when my body was becoming that of an average-sized woman, I started dieting, and I dieted my way into being a fat person. So it's not... The two are not dichotomous, the tremendously powerful diet industry and the size of Americans, for example.
So the diet industry, you would argue, is not there because we have developed an unhealthy relationship with food. The diet industry creates an unhealthy relationship with food.
The diet industry is there because it is a fabulously brilliant business model. They convince us that we are less than and unworthy and deserving of ridicule. They get us to hate our bodies. We buy what they're selling. We generally do lose a bit of weight and then put it back on, usually with a bit of an increase. And instead of blaming what we've done, we blame ourselves. We consider it a failure at best diet. So we then go back to the track, give them more of our money, and it's a cyclical thing. So you have to kind of respect their evil plan because it's totally working.
Is it really possible to be healthy and very fat? Is that not part of this conversation?
If we were sitting on a bar stool, Kim and I, you and I, which I would love to do one day, by the way. I
say bar stools, preferably.
Bada boom. Sorry. Wishful thinking. I could approach this from a number of ways, but I think discussing the science would derail the conversation. I will, however, suggest this to people. Seek out the actual studies and don't rely on the spin of, for example, magazines that rely on diet ads for their revenue. There's a wonderful website called sizediversityandhealth.org, and they have a couple of resource pages that are excellent with citations where you can read the actual studies, unspun studies. And I encourage everyone to do that for themselves. However, there are other ways to approach this, and there's one that would have to be the bottom line, and that is one's health, or their pursuit of health, is their business, and really no one else's. I wouldn't dare ask a thin person about their health or what their numbers are, what their doctor says to them. And I think that's kind of at the bottom line of everything. But if anyone listening believes that there is a causal connection between weight and ill health, I strongly urge them to go peruse the resource list at sizediversityandhealth.org.
Sizediversityandhealth.org. It is as if being fat is as much a signal for public disapproval as smoking now, doesn't it?
I would venture perhaps more so.
Do you think?
I do. Both are of course, viewed in our culture as moral failings.
Exactly.
When, in fact, they're not remotely the same. I mean, there are statistics, even the diet industry does not deny anymore that 85 to 95% of dieters will fail in the long term, in the relatively short long term, like 3 to 5 years out. So, you can't really say that they're the same, but you're absolutely right that both groups are considered pariahs.
When did you quit dieting?
When I did Fen, and it might be called something different in New Zealand, but it was a combination of drugs.
Oh, yeah.
I was one of the first in the U.S. to do it. This is the desperation that I had.
Just explain Fen. It was a hugely controversial thing.
It was phentermine and another drug, the name of which I can't remember. But this was an off-brand use of them. They were combined. And I weighed considerably less